Hello. Hopefully I'm online now, and hopefully you can still hear me. There we are. I've got sound good. Um, Welcome, Artcat. How are you doing? As you can see, still got Andrew on the drawing board. I was going to paint this week, but I thought, do you know what? Finish this one so we can get it done. I've also got a little video about how to draw the basic of a head. I made a little video earlier on this week and I shared it on YouTube and a few different places, so I will show that today. And I've also got a little time-lapse video of the portrait I did of Nicola Coughlan that was done on Sky TV Facebook page, Portrait Artist of the Week, which is shown on Sunday at 10 AM. I'm not a plug. This is basically because I do it on a Sunday as well. So I live streamed it whilst I was doing the portrait, and I did the time-lapse video. The stream went on for about 5.5 hours, but when I was doing the editing it was really good because I was able to find out how long I actually spent doing the portrait, and I cut out the sections where I went for a coffee break and I went for a wee and stuff like that, all the stuff you really don't want to see. A lot of stuff about me chatting, so I edited all that down and I got to about 4 hours and 15 minutes, so and then I squished all that down to a minute. So I've got that ready to rock and roll. So I'm going live on Twitch, Facebook and YouTube all at the same time. Hopefully the cameras are all working, which is great because that's why I'm a little bit late getting on. I was kind of fiddling with things in the background. So yeah, all been good. So if you come into the room, do say hello. I'm going to get my screens up now so I can see everybody and their different formats, because sadly I can't quite get them to kind of marry all the chats together. I can stream to 3 different places, but I can't get them to put all the chats into one place. So I've got several different windows open with all the chats in there. So when you're joining, when you start watching, if you've got any art related questions at all, you can ask me. We can talk about them here. You can talk about anything in general art related. Anything above and beyond that is just where the conversation naturally flows to. So yeah, we'll go from there. So what I'll do is I'll start off today just by showing you the basics of how to draw a head and face. The little video I made, it's about 13 minutes long, so you can sit back and sort of get comfy. And then if you have any questions coming off the back of that, ask away. Okay, so no further ado, I will go to my Be Right Back screen. Yeah, as I said, it'll take about 13-14 minutes or something like that. That's the length of the video. If you know some of these basics already, it's sometimes good to kind of reiterate them and go through your head, because some of the problems you have when you're creating a face, it can, things can move around a little bit. When you're drawing somebody's face, you go, there's something not quite right and I don't know quite what it is. If you can go back to some of these basics, it can really help you just go, oh, the nose isn't in the right place, it just needs to move up. It can help you that way. So as a review, it might help. So yeah, enjoy. Hello, my name's Lee. I'm an artist and I do a lot of portraiture. So today I've made a little video explaining a little bit about proportions. I'm going to use Bob, and Bob is a sculpture I made of the anatomy of a head, both the musculature and the skeletal forms of the facial features. I'm going to talk a little bit about proportions and how you can do simple things to help you find the basic forms within the face you want to draw. Now, everybody's face is different, so you have to use these as just a guide, a rough approximation about where things are. And you can do some simple steps to help you find those things when you're drawing your face. Here's a little video, I hope it helps. Okay, here I've drawn some very simple faces, and I'm going to break this down into its proportions. Now these proportions, as I said before, are basic. You can apply these proportions to most faces, but most faces don't look like Android dummies or crash test dummies. To start this one off, this is a basic facing forward head. I've drawn a circle and then drew a rectangle coming down. Now the base of the rectangle is about 1/3 of the height, so that's 1, 2, 3. So that's the facial plane from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin,
I've also drawn it in side profile here to give you an idea of space and depth. When I say top of the head, I don't mean here. I actually mean on the top of the head here. And the bottom of the chin is at this point here. Where the bottom of this circle comes in the facial plane, it actually reaches the base of the nose. I've also given myself a guideline, which is a straight line all the way through the face to the bottom of the chin. If I go from the bottom of the chin to the top of the head and go halfway up, I'll reach roughly about where the eyes will come. Again, from the side, top, bottom, halfway up, I've got the eyes. Now with the ball, I've shaved off the sides a little bit just to give me the side planes of the head, which will be about here. Now this can be called a Loomis process or method. If you were to take a circular shape from this point and a circular shape from that point, you actually start creating the eyebrow ridges and where they come. With the eyes, the space between the eyes is actually an eye's width, and the side of the head to the side of the head there are 5 widths of eyes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This can help position roughly where your eyes are going to go. If you take the corner of the eye and go straight down, you'll meet the nostril. If you go from the center of the eye all the way down, you'll meet the corner of the mouth. Now we know where the base of the nose is, because remember it's from a third. So from the bottom of the chin, or bottom of the nose, that's a third. A third of the way up will be your eyebrow ridge, which is also halfway through the circle. The ears can go anywhere from just above or just below the eyebrow ridge to the tip of the nose. So just above or just below the eyebrow ridge, or the base of the nose, just underneath here. Now for the mouth, if you go from the base of the nose to the bottom of the chin and go halfway up, you'll reach the mouth line. But if you look at a third of the way down, you'll actually reach roughly the top lip. Now as I said before, this is just the basic measurements. You do find on some people that have fuller lips, or they might have thinner lips, they might have broader noses, they might have eyes further spread apart. That's what makes us all different. So remember, these are just the basic proportions that you can work on from there to add the additional individuality to each person that you draw. And again, if you have hair, if you look at the circle and where this was halfway, this is roughly about a third of that entire ball, and that would be roughly where the hairline would be. Now again, if this person had a fringe that came all the way down, like Betty Page, you wouldn't see this. So these are just guides. If you were to follow the circle all the way through, you actually get an indication as to where the cheekbones are. Going straight up from the nostril, you can create the side planes of the nose. Looking at it from a side on, the ear is slightly angled, it's not straight up and down, and it's roughly in the center of the head. To draw the head side on, I've created 2 large egg shapes and joined them together. But all of the features all start to marry up. If you think that this is a 3-dimensional head and follow that line going right around, remember the head is slightly curved. This is further out because it's slightly curved. You meet the bottom of the ear, and if you go straight across, you meet the bottom of the nose. Now the side of the jaw angle depends on each individual person. Most males, their jawline comes straight down and it's in front of the hole, which is at the center of the head. You can see the cranium at the back, and how the neck comes out from it. The neck doesn't join in underneath the ear. So as the eyes are one eye width apart, if you went from the centre of the eye to the tip of the nose, back to the centre of the other eye, you create an equilateral triangle. And it just helps you position the placement of eyes, nose, ears and mouth. Remember, they're all different between each individual, so you've got to look out for their own characteristics and also how light hits them. To simplify this even further, you can create two rectangular boxes, and it takes a very simplistic view of the shape of a head, and you can start to manipulate or orientate it to look in different directions. This can help you figure out compositions that you might like to try. This one, I've got it looking straight on. I broke it down again into simple basic structures. With this one, I've done two ovals and joined them together. Now, there's lots of different methods and lots of ways of drawing proportions, and there's many videos on YouTube. What I found is I've tried to blend some of these things together so they make more sense when you view them yourself. With each oval, I've created a centre line, so I give direction to the face. With this one, it's looking up. With this one, it's looking out that way. But we're viewing it from this angle. We're viewing this one from that angle, and we're viewing this one from that angle. So how you orientate the head can depend on where you're viewing it from. With this one, I could draw another head exactly the same as the one above, or indeed this could be the back of the head. So depending on the orientation of your head will depend on your proportions. So say for example, because this one's looking down, I will lose some of the information because it's foreshortened. I have more head at the top and less face at the bottom. But the proportions can stay relative to the direction of the head. So if I go halfway between these 2 points, I'll reach the tip of the nose, and halfway between these 2 points I'll reach the line of the mouth. I can look at the eye and where it will sit within the facial plane, and come straight down from that and reach the corner of the mouth, and do the same on the other side. But as it goes on to the other side, it's actually thinner. The space here is thinner because it's further away and there's less of it. There's more space here to see the face. I'm putting the eyebrow line in just above the eyes. And I can build in a side plane of the cranium, and how the jaw comes down from that point and angles down towards the chin. I'm going to see less chin on the other side because it's further away. That's the cheek coming out and coming back down, and the nose protruding past the side of the mouth so we can't quite see it. With the eyeball itself, it sits within the eye socket. I don't know if you remember looking at Bob and seeing how big the hole was for the eyeball itself. The positioning of the space between the top of the eyelid and the eyebrow depends on the type of person that you're drawing, and how old they are, and how young they are, and lots of different connotations between it. But as a rule, the eyes are set further back than you think. One of the problems most people have, they put it on the same level as the bridge of the nose here, but you can see by the side profile it's sat further back. The eyebrow ridge comes over the top of where the eyeball itself sits back in its recess. And the skin that goes around the eye, both upper and top eyelid, wrap around that round shape. So, some simple techniques, something to try, something to think about the next time we do a portrait. Here's a few time-lapse videos to show you some different portraits that I've done, and you'll see there's different approaches to each one. Some are looking directly at you, some are 3/4, some might have the head tilted, and always I try to get the proportions of their face on that portrait, rather than trying to take a basic anatomy and trying to fit their face to fit it. Basic proportions are just a guide. They're a starting off point. They're to make you aware of where things go. Where does the eyes go? Where does the nose go? Where does the mouth go? But you can break all these things down. Everybody's faces are different. My advice is try drawing as many faces as you can. You'll learn as you do it. Believe me. The basic proportions are just there just to help you. I hope the video's helped you a little bit. Again, it is just the basics of proportions. There's lots you can learn and there's lots you can find out. There's some brilliant books out there about anatomy. Also, I would suggest sketch lots of people. It's the best way to learn somebody's face. Have fun, enjoy, and I'll catch you soon. Alright, bye bye.
Okay, so that was a little video made on the basics of portraiture. They are, again, just really the basics. There's something you can adapt and move to the face that you're drawing. Now, as I said before, we did the live drawing last Sunday of Nicola Coghlan, who's now on my drawing board. I can show you to you. And I did a time lapse of that, squish it down to about a minute. The overall drawing took about 4 and a bit, 4.25 hours in total. I drew it in charcoal, and some of the basics I can talk about in that video. Try and keep up without falling down. There we are. About the shape of her head. Now, she's not particularly oval. People have different face shapes, and it's how you can appropriate those different face shapes into your drawing. So, you know, if somebody's got a slightly fuller face, you make those ovals slightly wider, or the rectangles slightly wider, or slightly narrower if she's got a thinner face. You know, you've got to do it kind of appropriately. They're a guide. They're not so hard fast set in place that you can't move, because otherwise you get people who look very generic, and you will end up getting like that crash test dummy look, and that's something we want to try and avoid. If we're trying to get a likeness to somebody's face, we've got to see where their eyes are, how wide their nose is, or how full the lips are on their face. So there's a slight variation between each person that you're drawing, but as a guide they were just basics. So if we looked at it, we've got that oval shape. Remember, she's looking 3/4 view, so she's not looking full on. So the oval shape of her face would be about there, and the oval shape of her head would be about there. From top of her, sorry, the bottom of her chin is actually here. You can see slightly underneath the chin from the camera angle that she had. So that's actually the front part of her chin. So halfway up would be her eyes. If we took that circular view, half of that circle would be her eyebrows. Now, as her head is turned, that line isn't a straight line, it's a curved line. Remember, if this is the ball, that little line has to curve around the ball. So even if you just want to practice drawing ball shapes and putting lines through the middle and try and get that kind of ellipse shape, those little exercises can really help find the basic features of the face that you're drawing. And before you get sucked into doing details, you've got to know the size and shape of the head that you're drawing. Also look out for things like the shape of the hair, the basic shape of the hair, how that will fit over the skull. So if this is the back of her head here, her hair flows out past that shape. So you can see it's not following the form of her skull all the way through. The hair doesn't sort of start and finish here. It flares out because of the shape of her head. So all these little things, you've got to look at the image or the person that's out in front of you drawn from life, and see where their head is turned or angled, the shape of the head. So I would basically draw a little mark at the top and draw a little mark at the bottom, just so I can place it somewhere in the picture frame. Draw some of the bigger shapes like angles of hair, maybe sketch lightly the contour of that oval shape, or if you want to do it from the rectangle shape. Now the reason why I did that video with so many slight differences, remember I went down to the boxes and then I went down to the ovals, is because there are 4 or 5 different methods of how to find facial features. One of them is called the Loomis method, which is using that circle and the square, or the rectangle, and then putting the circle on the side of the head just to get the facial plane and help you find out where eyebrows are, and following it around to get the nose. All those things are just little guides and basically basics to break a face down, because it's so complex when you look at it that it scares an awful lot of people. But if you break it down to the basics, people's approach can be pared down into bite-sized chunks. If you go through the process, you can eventually find the features that you are looking at. So where do their cheeks go, how the light hits them, and how it falls over the different planes of the face. When I talk about planes of the face, I'm talking about the large chunky shapes that initially I drew, that kind of the crash test dummy look. But obviously you're not going to draw those lines in and have them in your drawing. You might follow the shadow shapes, which might indicate them. So it's about blending what you can visually see to some of the basics about where you know certain things are on a head. Eyes are in the middle of the facial plane, that type of thing. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Get my screens back up again because I missed just check out if anybody's in each room. If you do come into the room, you can say hello, do chat, let me know you're there. It's always nice to kind of have a conversation with people. I had some great chats with people during last week, some really good questions as well. So if you've got any questions to do with your artwork, it doesn't necessarily have to be about portraiture, it can be about anything at all. We'll hopefully try and answer them here. But as I said, I'm going to finish off Andrew's portrait today. I'm going to show you the little time-lapse video of Nicola Coughlan I did. Remember, if you want to have a go at doing this, or if you just want to find out what it's about, if you go to Sky TV Facebook page tomorrow at 10 AM GMT time, and this is on the 27th of February, so it'll be the 28th of February 2001. If you watch it on catch up, don't bother going there, it won't be on unless you want to scroll through their videos and find it that way. There's going to be a new celebrity and a new artist from a previous show, and they paint and draw or do their art process for 4 hours. You can paint along with them or draw along with them, and you can submit your artwork, your finished artwork, to the Instagram page. Sorry, so you're just using the hashtag, because you go to your Instagram, you upload your image, and you just put the hashtag myPAOTW, which is my portrait artist of the week. And if you follow that hashtag, you'll see there's about, I think, 40,000 different portraits now. So each week they get several thousand portraits, and several thousand portraits of Nicola Coughlan, and they do look at them all. You'd be surprised that you're getting in contact with some of the judges and some people who run the show, Sky Arts of the Year, follow it, and they see every single image that pops up, and then they select their favourite of the week, and so they've got a first, second and third. On the show tomorrow you'll see highlights of people's work that they've done. They do like that patchwork wall, and it's quite nice to see your work kind of being recognised that way as well. And there's people from all over the world, all different levels of ability, so you get some really good professional works, you get some amateurs who do amazing works, you get some kids who do some really well observed images as well. It's really interesting. Even if you just love portraiture or you just love art in general, it's a really interesting way to see how people manipulate mediums, how they do their process. If you like somebody's image, you can go to their page and then you can find out, you know, if they've got other works or if they've got how-to videos and things like that. So it's a great resource. Try it out, have a look, have some fun with it. Yes, so I'm going to show you a little bit of the time lapse. Well, it's only about a minute long. You'll see it kind of jump around an awful lot, me flail my arms. Remember, this was like it was 5.5 hours live stream, and I'm going to try and live stream it tomorrow. I'm going to be doing it on Twitch. It won't be on all formats, so it won't be on Facebook and YouTube. It will be only on Twitch, but I'll try and edit that down into about a minute so I can show you again next week what I've done. So enjoy this.
Hello, my name's Lee. I'm an artist and I do a lot of portraiture. So today I've made a little video explaining a little bit about
So there, it was a very short video. It just jumped around a little bit. You'll see things just like suddenly appear. Like I noticed on that video there that the ribbon suddenly appeared, disappeared. It's just where I got the clips mixed up when I was editing them all out. But you can generally see how the portrait was constructed. I'll try and improve on my time-lapse photography for next week. But this week, as I said, I'm going to continue with Andrea, and I've been drawing her for several weeks now. And I was just going to carry on with it myself and was going to try something else new, but I thought it'd be better for me to actually finish something, because normally you only ever get to see sort of the beginning part or halfway through a drawing, and then I go on to something else. You never see it fully finished. But to take you through right to the very end of this picture, so I'm going to be working on this today. So if you've got any questions at all, I'm more than happy to. I seem to have lost all my screens. Hang on a second. Okay, bear with me 1 second because I can't see. I've lost my screens for YouTube and Facebook, which means if you do join in the chat and you want to ask me questions, I won't be able to see them. So I have to quickly pop this back up again. So yeah, Andrea's been drawn now for, I think this is the possibly a third week. And I took it right from the very basics of drawing very blocky shapes to begin with, finding out the basic forms of where her head was, where her jacket was, and broke it all down bit by bit. And it's, there's been plenty of areas of adjustment there. I haven't gone and tried to be too specific and too tight about details right at the very beginning. I've let it kind of evolve. So if you watch the videos over a period of time, you can kind of see how things have moved and shifted and navigated around a little bit. I've changed the shape of her chin, I've played with the shapes of her hair, moved those around a bit. So my biggest tip is draw lightly, because if you can draw lightly, you can adjust your drawing, and that flexibility in your drawing process really helps you get to the result that you want. If you draw too hard to begin with, once you put that mark down, it's there and you can't shift it, and it becomes like a ghostly line in the background that you can't quite get rid of, and it can kind of frustrate you. The other tip is don't go into details too soon. Often, I mean, I've talked about placing the eyes, nose, ear, mouth, but I don't necessarily draw all the fine details of it. I just place them, because naturally when you develop a drawing, it'll start to move around a little bit. Things will get wider and narrower, and if you draw an eye to its perfection, you won't want to shift it if it's a little bit too far to the left. Whereas if you just made a couple of marks to indicate where the eye is, moving 2 marks is a lot easier. If you've drawn them lightly, they're not going to be in your drawing at the end. So I say this an awful lot. I virtually say it every week, and it's a way of still reminding myself that it's important to do that and not get sucked into doing those details. So if again you have any issues with your drawing, you can ask. I'm more than happy to chat about them here. If there's anything you'd like to know, like you want to see a video on something, let me know what that is, and we can get that done. So check the stream is still alive. Yep, still on. Good. I'm still finding out my screens, by the way. Yeah, so if you've got a specific thing that you're struggling with, you know, we all work in different ways. You might be more of an abstract painter and you want to find out some elements of that you want to develop in your work. Talk about them here. This isn't just about realism, it's about art in general, and I quite like to see how people perceive art, how they create it, because it's interesting for me. This is kind of my art passion. I'm really interested in art in all its formats, and you can be selective. You can have a preference for certain things, certain styles, and certain schools of work and things like that. You can talk about your favorite artists, good art movies that you've seen, anything like that. It really helps to communicate and chat about these things. It kind of helps you formulate your own approach. One of the things I would say is don't get into the trap, if you're starting out, of trying to find your style. There's a hurriedness when we're starting out that we must be unique, completely unique, and we have to have kind of these tropes or little tips and tricks of how you do your artwork in a particular way to make you look completely different to everybody else. Don't try and jump into doing that too soon. That will naturally come out of your process. As you start to play around with the different mediums that you use and the different types of brushes and the way you hold them and how you put the paint or how you put your pencil marks down, that will naturally develop over a period of time, and your flavour of art, or what you like, your preferences and how you like to represent things, will become your style. It kind of naturally develops, rather than having a particular formatted process and you only stick to that. You can become known for it, but the problem is you're so confined by it, then you've got no way of kind of reaching past it, and a lot of people build in a sense of fear that they're scared of changing it because people won't know it's their work anymore, and it stops them from progressing as an artist. And I've seen that a bit, and it can be frustrating. You know, it's very difficult. Kate on Facebook, hello, good to see you. You tell me what type of pencil am I using to draw with? You know, I think it's a beautiful piece. Thank you very much indeed. You want to know what type of brand of... Oh, this is a video from last week. Hang on. I've answered a question from last week on Facebook. I'll have to hook Facebook back up again, because that was a question from last week, but it was a good question. I use a brand of pencil, a couple of ranges. I use Caran d'Ache, I use Blackwing, which pencil I've been drawing mostly for this portrait, and I use Caran d'Ache. I use Derwent and Faber-Castell as well, but I use them in different brands at different times because they give me a slightly different feel. As you develop some, like your style and approach to things, you'll have a natural affinity with a certain style or quality of a pencil or quality of a paintbrush that suits your preferences. That's what I was saying about how that builds up your particular style, because how you select those things are intuitive to you as the artist, and those little elements can really start to create the uniqueness that you search for in the very beginning of being an artist. You want to be different, you want to say something new. Well, those are elements that go along with it. So it's quite funny that I clicked on a video. What I was trying to do was open up the Facebook page of the live stream so I can see all the chat, and I accidentally hit the wrong button. So I'll try and get that back. If you have any questions at all, we'll get stuck into them and we'll try and find an answer for you. There we go. I'm just getting up my YouTube videos up and running now. Let's try and get this Facebook one sorted out. Where's the live stream gone? My live stream seems to have disappeared off of Facebook, which is a bit disconcerting. There we are, we're back. It might be just the recording of it. Oh, it says live. Good. It's just so I can see the chat bar in each of these windows, because there's no way of me seeing the chat in all different streams. It's a real juggling act when you're kind of streaming 3 different formats all at the same time. So we've got Angela. Hello, and Michael, you're over on YouTube. Good, I'm not alone. I was beginning to think nothing was working today, because normally I've got like a few people kind of in the room having a little chat, and there was nobody there. It was just me alone. So yeah, I'm glad you're here. So all of these windows now are now open. I can sit back. I can not sit back. I can get on with the act of drawing Andrea's face. So. Hope you caught the videos. If you didn't, the video of the thing about portraiture and forms and things is on Facebook. Angela, I saw some of your work during this week. Really impressive. You had posted up on Instagram. Love how you're using that kind of grisaille palette to find shapes of forms of things, and how you're blending and softening edges. Really interesting to look at. So well done. Congratulations. I said was going to do some painting this week, but I've decided I will leave that till next week. I really want to finish this portrait off for no other reason that I've kind of taken you through to a stage, and I thought it would be a bit wrong really that you kind of don't see the fully finished element of it. I'm just darkening this element down here underneath her arm, to make sure you can see it on there. You can. Good. Thankfully the camera's all working. I had a bit of a mare with them this morning, as per usual, just before I started, so I tried to figure that out first before going live, so I was a little bit late starting today. Again, I'm just building these shapes up. I'm looking for small nuance differences in the background, little kind of shapes of shadows, how dark little things are, and little areas of light, because that might seem inconsequential to the overall portrait, and then indeed it's just something there in the background that might not be noticed by anybody, but there's a subtlety to it. It gives you kind of a little sense that things have a form behind it. It's subconsciously trying to say there's a landscape behind this person is outside, and there is something there in the background. And if things, say for example I just left that as light as it is at the moment, won't really connect with this background here. So where this is as dark down here, it has to be as dark down at this point as well. So that's what I'm going to start to do. I'm going to start building these elements up, just so the body feels like it's actually in a space. Now what I've also noticed is there's like little highlights that come down the side of this jacket, which I'm going to put in a moment, but I just want to create this little textural element to the portrait as well. A little tiny highlight just there, and then this is heavier just here. So when people say how do you draw a portrait like that, this is it. I look at all the little subtle differences, and for me it's the interesting part of the process, that I am selecting and editing it down a little bit. I'm not going into the photorealism of it. I'm literally applying sort of the tonal aspects and positioning of shapes down first, and building those areas of shadows up to give me a sense of form, and then refining the form into its textures, and those textures will then relate to things like hair and what the skin's like, how the light's catching it, how it's softer on one side and darker on another, all those little tiny variations. And everybody looks at things slightly differently. Everybody has a different perspective or filter of their own particular choice about how they like to view and see things. What I'm trying to do is keep to a certain truth that so people can recognize Andrea as Andrea. So I'm not abstracting it too much. But when I look at the detail of, when I say detail, I don't mean sort of eyelashes. I mean sort of the shapes of things. I try to position those as well as I can to give me a certain believability in form, but it's very abstract. So I've used this description before about talking about little shapes like this over the where the ribbon is meeting the jacket. We get this like abstract shape. So to me, that is the detail of something. That little abstract shape, if you expand upon it, can be an abstracted part of how you can really push and pull forms and shapes. It's called plastic arts for a reason, because it's malleable, and it can be interesting to create that abstraction. If it's about expression that you want to try and get across, you can look at the quality of the textures and expand on those. I mean, I could take the texture and flow of her hair and have that texture and flow come right through the face and form of her jacket. Really play around with it. I can look at these heavy marks and really pull them across and just do it in one go. That I'm editing out lots of subtlety, but I'm getting the feeling that I want to try and achieve. So I'm looking at the texture and the quality of the model making, and that's something you have to kind of experiment with and play with. Literally experiment. What can you do with your pencil or paintbrush? What expression can you make? Can you push the paintbrush into the page and drag it around? What quality of mark is that? Those aren't necessarily painting things, but you're getting the essence of them. Andrew Sewell over on YouTube, I think. Oh shucks, thank you. Plenty of hours and swear words went into those paintings, but I was really happy overall with the outcome. Good. I'm glad you're happy with the outcome. And yeah, it is frustrating. You know, I think I talked before when I was talking about, I was doing some Sergeant sketches, that he would shout out the words, he'd go demons, demons, because he'd put a mock down the wrong place. He was in polite society and company, and so the great good of his day. You know, if you swore, it would be like so shocking. But yeah, I can't tell you the number of times I've just gone, oh, for Pete's sake, another word. As you're doing something, and it is a frustration. But it also indicates that you have an aim, you have a vision for something. So when something's not gone quite right, it is frustrating, but the clarity is you've got that guide about what it is you want to achieve. And if you know you haven't done something right, immediately you can you know, have an expletive here and there, but just to rectify it. And sometimes you need to take a step back and look at it holistically as a view of the entire piece and go, okay, why is this not going right? What is it about this that is not right? And be really clinical about it. And it's kind of a balance of, you want to have that sense of investment into doing the work. You want to do it because you've got passion for it, but also the balance of a perspective and observant of your work, to stand back, to say, that's not right, I need to move that up, I need to move that down, and to go back to it with that sense of clarity. Vincent Desiderio described this really well when he was asked about how he painted this really emotive picture of his son, and he said that he paints with ice. You almost have to paint with ice cold water in your veins, that you can't emote over the concept in every brush mark into your piece, because you would never get it done. You'd be if it's a very powerful, visceral piece that is charged with lots of emotion, if you did every brush mark with all that sense of emotion in it, you'd be exhausted. Plus you would never get the painting or the picture done, because his piece was about his son that had had surgery when he was young, and there was a problem with the air tube, and it left his son with a brain injury, and he was physically disabled, but he wanted to talk about the strength of his son and his compassion, his love for his son. He couldn't paint every mark with that sense of compassion and love for his son. He had to stand back and go, the colour isn't right there, it needs to be a little bit darker. That kind of distant observation. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of like, you do get sucked into it, but you also have to stand back from it. It's a real balance. And that's something that's ongoing. You kind of have to make friends with that process and that frustration, and yeah, swear words. You get very good at them. You become very, what's the word? You become very eloquent in your use, or one's use with your terms when things aren't going right. Well, I know I do, certainly. There's been times, I mean, I can go back to the chat about, I did Sky Portrait Artist of the Year, and I drew a picture of Angela Mahindra, and she was lovely. She was a lovely sitter, didn't move, great face to draw, and I really fluffed it up, and purely because I couldn't stand back on the day. I don't know what it was, never really happened to me before, but standing back and looking at it, observing it, coming back home, took me about 2 weeks to kind of understand what the hell went wrong. And there was an awful lot of expletives that day, I tell you what. Not necessarily on the day, I was just being polite to everybody, and I kind of didn't kind of blow up or anything like that. I was almost stunned by the fact I hadn't achieved what I know I could achieve in the time frame. And it wasn't about time pressure, and it wasn't about being scared or having a fear. There was just a real lack of my own observance, and it took me a couple of weeks to figure out what that was, and it certainly helped me focus an awful lot more and keep myself in check, and seeing things and about how to move things around a little bit. And I think it's certainly improved my drawing. So failing at something sometimes can really help you grow as an artist, and that's part of the process as well. You know, you're not going to get everything perfect all of the time. Sometimes failing at something can give you a happy accident, and it can really work out well, better than you'd even planned. And you have to kind of still take that process of standing back and going, how did that happen? That makes really good. What did I do? And you have to break it down and really kind of investigate what it was that made something successful, as well as what went on so badly to make something not work quite so well. So there's always that kind of push and pull process as you're working. Many artists, I think nearly every artist I know who works professionally kind of goes through that. And it's always a challenge. I think when it becomes formulaic and it becomes a process and you're not really thinking about it, the quality of the work always seems to drop off for me when I look at other artists when they do that. And you can see it. It's almost it's unspoken, but you can kind of see when somebody's churning something out for the sake of it just being done, and when somebody's really invested in it. It's an unspoken language. It comes out through the artwork. As you look at more and more artworks, you can see different qualities in it. You get to train your eye, you get to train your art mind about how you think about things, what it is you want to achieve, how it is you want to achieve it, approaches that you might take, that investigation and search that you do, that everybody does when you're creating artwork, is kind of an enjoyable part of being an artist, that you're not kind of tied up to just doing the same thing over and over again. I would get bored. One of the reasons why I do painting and sculpture and I work on different formats and different things at the same time is to keep myself invested in what I'm doing, to keep my eye fresh to seeing what I'm doing, and it really helps that way. So that was a very long-winded way of me saying that, Angela, but well done. So yeah, can I ask, did you watch Sky Portrait Artist of the Week? Did you have a go yourself? They were talking about something that Anthony Gormley has got going on at the minute, where he was asking people to put up their artwork in their windows across the UK and take photographs of it. So it was advertised on the One Show, and it was advertised through the Sky Arts Facebook page as well. They were talking about people showing their work. I would have done it. The problem is we've got single glazed windows and they have a horrible way of getting condensation on them, which for paper would have just been atrocious. So I haven't done it, but because we got really crap windows. And I don't worry, I use my art as an insulation. So yeah, I haven't done it myself, but I've seen some pictures online, and it's really interesting to see again who's getting involved with art. I mean, I think since lockdown, we've had time on our hands to really, indulge some of the things that we've been putting off or never had time for because life's been busy, where we've had maybe a little bit more time, or some of us have, to kind of do a bit of art, or follow your little passion that you have. That it's important to kind of do that, and I think people now, when they're getting into their thing, whatever it is, could be gardening, that you hold on to it a little bit, even if we come out of lockdown, that we still invest our time into getting that life balance back. It's been up the other way. Before it was like all work, no play, and now we've had lots of time to play and there's no work. We kind of need the balance of the two, I think. So when we go back to hopefully coming out of lockdown, as it seems to be moving that direction now, fingers crossed. I know I've said that before, but I'm an optimist. Excuse me. Yeah, that we need to kind of keep on doing what feeds us as well. Certainly helps with the mental health, and just keeping our mojo going. So I'm building up this tone as a chat. I'm looking at it basically as a flat, fuller shape. I can see areas of darkness being a little bit harder here. And again, I'm trying not to introduce any streaks, so I'm going with the flow and shape of the jacket by going in the same sort of direction, building up the tones. This is a 2B pencil, so I'm taking some of these darks and blending them back out. I can see the form and shape of them and how they come down here a little bit and disappear into this tone. So there's no hard edge to this shadow. It's like a soft transition between this sharper edge here, where this bit of material comes out, and then it kind of quite quickly gets a little bit lighter, but then slowly transitions towards this edge, and it's keeping that kind of consistency through the pencil marks is important, because if I start adding streaks because I'm trying to hurry it up, I'll add a texture that kind of distracts from the quality of the material. And it kicks back this way a little bit as it comes around. What's interesting is a little tiny touch of highlight just about here, which I'm going to put in a second, which is the light which seems to be moving around the shape of Andrea's coat, which is quite interesting because the light's coming from this direction. There was no other light source, so that could be just reflected off, say, the sand on the beach or something like that, how that light's bounced back up onto a figure. Reflected light doesn't have to come from a reflective surface. It could be a white wall she stood against, and the white wall will bounce light. With lights, say for example there's a white wall here along the edge, if the light bounced on it, it would actually light up this side of her head, because the light bounces off the white wall onto this side of the head. So even though the main light source is coming from this direction, which is the sun, the light from the wall behind it will bounce light up. Or indeed, I think this is literally the light of the sand which is bouncing and reflecting onto just the edge of a jacket, which gives me some definition between her and the background. It's slowly starting to build up to the right tones, which is nice. I'll take that all the way down, I think. was the news this week? I got a new book, which I can talk to you about. Andrew, you saying on YouTube, sometimes your swear words express your feelings of frustration. Thank God my studio is at the end of the garden. Staring back and stepping back, looking at what I've done helps me eventually see what I need to do exactly. And I think if you make friends with that process, excuse me, if you make friends with that process of stepping back, you won't be beating yourself up for getting things wrong, because everything is an adjustment until your piece is finished. You know, there's always a nuance which you can tweak or shape, and it's you visually about understanding about what satisfies you as an artist, what feeds you as an artist, what do you like about something. I was watching a couple of videos on a couple of artists this week, just watching them work. You know, they would put up a live stream of them working, and I quite like to see how different people use different marks of their brushes, and it gives me something to think about, because their approach really helps me see my approach. It's not to necessarily say I will try what they've done in my artwork, but I can maybe see how they're playing with form and shape of things in a simple way to begin with, how they've used mixed colours up to describe certain things. The quality of the brush mark, you know, can sometimes say an awful lot about the image that they're creating. If you think back to Sargent, the little flurries that he seemed to put down, put in perfect position, perfectly placed, he'd use a thick chunky brush and just do a sweep like that, and it would look like the ruffle of a chiffon scarf. And you're going, oh my god, that's perfect, that looks like a chiffon scarf, and it was just one brush mark. How the hell did you do that? Well, you don't see the hours of endless experimentation and flurries of understanding what a twist of the hand might do to a brush stroke, or to give you a quality of a surface, that he has been doing it for such a long time that he's standing back and going through almost like a toolbox of techniques in his head, going, that bit just needs a little dab of a bright chunky texture. I remember using that brush, and in that way that I got that. And then he'll go mix up his colour, get his colour right first, and he'll stand back and look about the location, about where he's going to put that on the page, and really consider it and really look at it and observe it, and then walk up and just do that. That's immediate and that's quick, that brush mark, but you don't see the hours and the years of work it's got to get him to that stage. And you know, to me that's an interesting process, and something I would love to be able to kind of cherry pick and use on occasion, but it takes time, and so if you don't rush it, you'll be fine. I'm just going to get that book. I'm going to reach over. And get this. Ugh. If I was organised, I would have had this well prepared. Sometimes I have to do other things, like figure out how to switch on a camera. This is a book that I have got this week, Drawn Ahead for Artists by Oliver Sin. Now, the reason why I got it was an interesting question somebody put on Facebook page that I was following, about how do you draw certain ethnicities, you know, how do you draw them differently? It's actually the same process. The qualities of their face are going to be slightly different because of their features, and their skin might be slightly different in tone, but it was really interesting to see it as a how to draw a face and eyes, nose, lips. Now he literally does the basics of how to draw a face and eyes, nose, a head and stuff like that, but it goes back into saying it's about where their features are. You know, you talk about that Loomis process, about that circle and the rectangle, and how you can animate it and look in different directions, and how you can break that down into its forms and refinement. But he does use sort of different ethnicities, so I was really quite interested in it. What I did notice about it in the book is that the women in it seem incredibly refined and kind of almost 1950-ish, whereas the blokes don't look like that. You know, the blokes look sort of gruff and sort of big beards and stuff. There was lovely. This one reminded me of Kathy Kollowitz, by the way. Another good expressive artist, drawing wise. It wasn't about necessarily realism, but you certainly got a sense of humanity in her work. So an artist to look out for, Kathy Kollowitz. But this is one of the ones I actually loved in the book. You know, the quality of her hands. There's so much life in that face, and I don't just mean all of her wrinkles, but you can really see that she lived a life as well. So I was just interested about portraiture. I thought that was a lovely piece, that one there, because it's deceptively simple, where he's kind of exaggerated certain things about the neck, so he elongated it and narrowed it to give it a slightly more feminine feel to it. But I thought it was a beautiful structure of her face and her lips and her nose and her eyes. So yeah, I saw that online and I thought, I'll get that for myself. It arrived this week. And I shared the information about the book to the person who asked about how to draw different ethnicities and things, because I thought it might be a good, helpful, useful guide. Again, different ethnicities have where their eyes go and their head shapes and all the rest of it are roughly the same. There's slight nuance differences to musculature. Not musculature. The skull itself, musculature that wraps around it will give certain features, brow lines and things like that. But that's not to say every person of that ethnicity has those features, because they don't. Again, everybody's different, so it's not about how you draw one ethnicity over another ethnicity. It's about how you draw that face solely. That's it. But I did find the book interesting, and I'm interested in processes that he uses with charcoal. One of the things I did pick up this week, I don't even know it's on here, if we can get the camera to look at it, it's just the descriptions about what the things are called on the ear. And you know, you got the earlobe and you get that little channel where it goes into your ear hole, but there's like a little tiny flap of skin and it's called a tragus, and I didn't know what that was called before. So it's kind of useful to describe when you're doing demonstrations about what these things are. But yeah, again, I learnt something new for it. It wasn't that very much. I got it from Amazon. I got it cheaper than it says on the back of the book, so yeah, check it out. It's by Oliver Sin, Techniques for Mastering Expressive Portraiture. I'll put details of that up on the end of the notes later on. So yeah, if you've got any good books or good tips or good bits of information, please do share them. I'm always up for kind of checking them out as well. But yeah, just even to reading different books. So I always laugh because how-to books are very dogmatic about how you should and shouldn't do things, but it's just one person's approach over another person's approach. I like to kind of pick and choose. I'm a bit of a magpie when it comes to processes. I'm kind of interested to see how and why people would use certain things in their work. I sort of just noticed the hair and how the tone of this gets darker in certain places and lighter in others, and I think I need to just darken this whole area down of this hair, coming even right up to this bit here. And as I darken this down, it's gonna get to the same tone as this, which needs to be even darker, which means I need to go back over that again, and then I can pick the highlights out of it. And picking out those little bits of highlight can now become a part of the texture of the hair, so I'll need to start to think about qualities of the mark making that I'm going to be doing, because it's got to ring true to the quality of what it is I'm drawing at that particular time, whether it be a hair, a jacket, or a stitch, or something like that. And this little bit that comes down, this is obviously darker. This is darker as well. So this whole hair along this bottom part of her jacket. Again, this is a lot darker. I might have to go up a grade of pencil. Probably go to a 4B or something like that. Don't want to go too dark too soon. And that comes up here. So I'm really sort of sculpting the shadows now. As it comes across, some of these shadows get sharper. It's a little tiny bit of definition to this bit, which gives a little bit of clarity to the end of where hair is and the jacket is. It's soft a little bit there. So as you darken one area down, it has a knock-on effect to everything else. So it's a bit like when we were finding the positions of things or moving them around. As you start to build your tones up, as you darken one area, the other area that was light really looks light, and you have to push the tone of that down a little bit so it's not so glaring. And as you push the tone of that down a little bit, you realise that this dark area starts to look a little bit light again. It needs to be a little bit darker. So it's like a push and pull of lights and darks. It's about stepping back and seeing the entirety of it and seeing how those shapes and darknesses work. See, this darkness comes across here a little bit, and this whole area is darker. But this is the kind of playful finding out of your picture about how certain shapes flow into certain things. This whole lapel needs to be darker in tone. There's little elements of light, but I'm just going to put a little wash of 2B graphite over that. Again, coming up through the hair. Coming up to the top here. This needs to be a little bit taller. This needs to be a little bit more solid. As well, it's looking very grainy. Tone of this needs to be a bit darker as well. So I was watching a good video with a chap called Stephen Bauman. You can check him out on YouTube. A Florence trained atelier artist, and beautiful images he creates. And he's got quite a good collection of YouTube videos, and they're interesting to see visually because my work is obviously different to his. It's nowhere near his level of proficiency is amazing. Mine's still searching, I think. The qualities in his work that I love, that I can see that I can refine my approach to my work and develop. And there's other elements that I'm kind of going, okay, it's very formulaic and a bit, to me, kind of like stuck. So there's a balance between taking elements that I like out of his work and pushing them into what it is I want to visually say about the images that I create. You can take influence from artists. You know, it might be an artist you just don't like his overall images, but you love the way he throws around paint, or she throws around paint. You can take that element of their work and put it into yours. I love the images that he creates. There's awful lot of subtle quietness to them, which is visually interesting. But how his method is, his kind of approach to it, how he lays down marks and builds forms up, his process is so refined. I still like my kind of messiness almost to my approach to things. How in a way, I have more investment to kind of just play around with shapes and kind of let the thing evolve, rather than be too analytical and too clean about everything. I like the messiness nature of how works great, but that's just my flavour of stuff. So I will take some of these techniques and how he constructs certain things, but I'll try and keep that messy nature to my process. If I can describe it any better, I would. and try and blend those two things together. So it's like going into a sweetie shop and picking and choosing visually, and your sweetie shop is art history. It's not just who's alive and doing YouTube videos. It's art history and who's out there creating what, and what you can best select from them. That's what I was saying about that, how to draw a face and head. There are particular ways of doing it which are used an awful lot in animation and cartoons and things like that, that Loomis process, which is really helpful, but you don't want to sort of have that, I don't want to have that certain cartoonishness to it, but certainly as a process I can see how it fits in with what I'm doing. So if I'm struggling with something, I can just stand back and go, okay, if I was to apply that process to this, where would things be? And I go, oh, okay, things are just not big enough or small enough, or too big or too small. Yeah, no, it's like I was playing around with the idea of this shadow coming underneath her chin, that her chin shadow was a little bit darker than I had it, and it visually produces the shape of her face, because her face looks like it was being too long, but this mark down here was becoming a part of her facial plane, and it isn't. It's underneath her chin. So you've got to think about your image that you're creating in 3 dimensions. How are you going to construct the believability? Because again, you've got a 2-dimensional piece of paper. You're trying to create the illusion of depth, so your tonal shapes have to follow the form that they're on, but the depths of your tones can really push shapes back into the distance, or heights can bring them out closer to you, as a general rule. But yeah, I need to go up a grade of pencil, I think. So I'm going to look for my, it'll probably take me 5 minutes to try and find this. I literally have a box of all my pencils, which is the most unpractical way of drawing, because you just ferret around in it for too long. If I was a little bit more organised with how I do things, I would have all my pencils laid out, ready to go. But I'm not. There it is. There it is. Good. This is a Caran d'Ache. You can see by the size of it, it's a soft pencil, so it wears down really quickly. To draw with this might be a little bit harder. To draw with that using a pencil extender becomes a little bit easier. So even though it's really small, it doesn't mean you say you have to check it out. These pencil extenders can really help you as well. Even just stick a normal pencil in, they kind of really think about the construction marks, about how you draw things, are really helpful. So if you haven't got one of these, maybe a little bit of investment, because they're only a couple of quid. If you get used to using them, they become really, really handy. Because you try not to control the tip quite so much. I still see people draw like that, and I saw a really good. I mean, it's not the quality of the work is bad. I saw a little Twitch video of somebody drawing, and they had an overhead cam shot of their hand, and you couldn't see the artwork. But okay, when they took the hand away, the artwork worked really, really well. I was just thinking, how can they visually see what they're doing? So unless they're kind of looking sideways on to see where the paper is touching the page, you know, that must be the only way, because unless they are psychic and they just know where their hand is in space, but they really couldn't see, you know, do that, really couldn't see where their pencil is touching the page. I mean, it's talent. the image was lovely, but I just, you know, if you're drawing for a long period of time, if you've got to hunker down and kind of try and see where your pencil is on the page like that, you're going to change your perspective. And there's a process for a long, I mean, talking about not just the process of how long you're painting for that day, but over a period of time, you've got to think about yourself physically, and how you draw things. Ethan over on Twitch, hello son. Glad you can join us. How you doing? This is my son Ethan, he's over in Holland. It's been ages since we chatted, feels like it. Or was it last week? Week before? Yep, so I am literally just working on Andrea's portrait. I was going to do a bit of painting this week, but I decided, no, I'll be good and I'll finish off what I started. And I did a little time lapse, which you might miss, of the Sky Portrait Artist of the Week. Picture of Nicola Coughlin, who's in Derry Girls. If anybody is not from Ireland or Northern Ireland and you don't know Derry, it is one of the funniest comedies about Northern Ireland I've seen in ages. And the funny thing is, because it's filmed around about the 90s, early 90s, I was here in Belfast at that time as a student, and my folks live up in sort of Derry and Liver Valley, around that area. So a lot of that kind of attitude of the youth were my cousins as well, and there is so much truth in it. It's quite scary. It's like, oh my god, did they really follow me around? You know, you can make a connection with it that way. But it is just hilarious. You know, some of the ridiculous things they get up to, you think, oh, that would never happen. No, they did. There's so much truth in it, it's scary. But yeah, brilliant fun. And she was in that, which I think is going to do, producing a third series of it, which I can't wait for. Which is in this new thing called Bridgerton, which I haven't seen, which is on Netflix. It's like a period drama-y type thing with a slightly more modern twist. To be honest with you, that's not my thing that I would watch, but I don't know, I might watch one and see how I get on. I was kind of fiddling through Netflix and Amazon Prime yesterday to try and find things to kind of watch, and I found an art film that I'd never seen before about an artist. It's about Renoir, so I want to check that one out. I think there's one with William Dafoe as Van Gogh that I want to see as well. Is it Eternal Life? I think it's called Eternal Life. That looks really good. And I've got some videos of other ones. I've got one on Goya, which is interesting because historically it helps you. There's an interesting one. There's one with Frida Kahlo, which is Salma Hayek. That was interesting. Now, the funny thing is you have to kind of watch those videos through a kind of Hollywood filter, because they're not exactly, they're a little touch on art history, but they're not exactly art history. Some of them have a lot of truth to them. Some of them are kind of exploiting certain aspects for entertainment purposes. But yeah, I just find the history of the lives of artists kind of particularly interesting. Shows if I was a mechanic, I would want to know how to be watching Steve McQueen, of Le Mans and Hunt, things like that. Ethan, you said you've been lurking for a little bit. Oh, it was last week. And Sportler 1123 over on Twitch. Howdy to you too. Glad you're here. So yeah, if you join the chat and any of the streams, because I'm doing this streaming on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. Whenever you're watching it, wherever you're watching it from, if there's information you want to know, talk about, could be just a general chit chat about art, things you're having problems with. I'll say kind of art related, because if you're, it's geography and you're lost, I may not be the best person to ask. I always laugh because Andrew works in tourism and she hasn't got a really good sense of direction, let's say. So we've often sort of joked about how many people she's obviously sent out into the wilds of Northern Ireland, and they're still wandering around to this day trying to find out where they are. She's very good. She's very good about her job and what she does. If any of her bosses are watching. So yeah, they were getting into trouble. I always think it's really funny that, how people still want that human connection. She works in the tourist information, and it's in a day of information where you can find out so much stuff using mobile phones and Googling and asking Siri and all the rest of it, people still want that human touch. You know, if they want to go, where's the best place to eat in your town? They don't want to Google it. They want to ask somebody. They want to talk to real life human beings. So it's still an important job, I think, to have in towns and things. I think there was a little bit of a process where people want to automate things into a booth or a kiosk where they can type in to a machine, you know, where is so and so. But people like the human interaction. I think coming out of lockdown and when we're all allowed to go back out and visit places again, I think people will actually want to use their tourist information offices and, you know, go to local places and find out themselves and talk to people, because we've been locked up for so long. A little bit of freedom being nice. But that's just my take on it anyway. You can agree or disagree. I'm still looking at this shadow. I'm trying not to be too tentative about how to build this up. I do know that this area has elements of darkness in it, which I need to start building in. Again, I'm just looking for these darker shapes which come out to give an indication about how dark the jacket needs to go, because these dark bits in the hair are actually the jacket underneath, so they can give you an idea of the tonal depths that this area needs to be, because I'm kind of a little bit lost in it so far. I'm trying to keep, if that's that dark coming out, then this jacket needs to be darker here. As I said about that pull and push of darks and lights, that you can allow the drawing to start to dictate how dark something is and how light something is. I'm trying not to lose the forms and shapes that I'm starting to build up, but I know that this bit, for example, is darker, so I can go over that whole thing, but I can refine it a little bit because it's a little bit crisper there, and make that whole bit darker. And as I take that tone down, this whole area needs to be at least this dark. Again, this is all kind of really subtle stuff that may not interest somebody's eye initially when they're looking at it, but if you start to deviate from it, it starts to create an untruth. It doesn't quite look like it exists on that skin that exists on that body. Oh, you're saying why doesn't your channel have a subscribe button? It will do as soon as I get affiliated, as Ethan's just explained. On different channels you get affiliations for different things, so if you build up so many viewers on Twitch, I think it's 50, we're up to about 30 odd so far. People can subscribe to it. You can follow, because often I get notifications of follows when people are going live and things, so you can do that. That'd be great. Same over on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel, or you can like the video that you're watching, and it just helps build the presence of the channel on the stream, so whenever you do go live, if lots of people start watching it, it kind of goes up further up the algorithm and it gets shown that way. Facebook, same thing. All of them are slightly different. All formats have their own process and own algorithms, and I have got really confused over how an algorithm works. I don't even think they know what an algorithm is. Funny thing is, I was watching a really good chat on a Friday, between a guy called Dan Ferguson and another chap called Emmanuel. His surname's tipped out my head, but anyway, if you look for Dan Ferguson on Instagram, they have a really good chat every Friday around about 5 or 6 o'clock, and they were talking about this yesterday, about the algorithm of Instagram. and how they thought they'd kind of understood it, and then it changed, and they didn't quite get as many likes and follows and stuff, and should they be concerned about it? And I think the upshot was, just do your own thing, and if you try and post twice or once a week, or you put so many hashtags in, or you don't put so many hashtags in, it almost doesn't matter. It's like a minefield of stuff. The important thing is that people who like your work start to follow you, and you're better off, I think, having quality followers like you lot than having a million people who have watched you once, clicked follow, and then never follow you. What's the point? I'd rather have 5 people follow me who really follow the work that I do. That kind of curation is really more important to me personally. So that's it. But again, check Dan Ferguson out on Instagram. Really good painter, interesting how he constructs his work, and the conversations it has with Emmanuel, or Manny, I wish I could remember his surname. It'll come to me at some stage. Are really interesting. I'm sitting back and reflecting about what they're talking about and thinking about how I approach it with my work. So something to check out at least. Yeah. Ethan, you're saying over on Twitch, it's followers and hours streamed and average of viewer count. Yep. But the average viewer count is only taken at the end of the stream. I'm glad it doesn't start off like that, because I didn't have anybody when I first started the stream on Twitch. It can really, it goes up and down. It's like a surf. You have to kind of like go with the flow of it. The funny thing is, I get sort of updates of algorithms on how many people watch the streams and stuff, and it may not be as many to begin with, but certainly over the weeks, like, I know more people have watched it. So sometimes when it says, Facebook, only one person's watching it, I don't get too worried about it, because I know over the week we've reached 600 or 700 people. And some videos I had several thousand people watch it, and I haven't really said anything different that week over what I've said another week. Well, probably a little bit different for what I'm doing, but do you know what I mean? My process isn't different, so I just decided not to worry about it. Sometimes it's a lot of people are watching. Not everybody engages with writing comments down. I would say though, the more people write the comments down, the more conversations we have, probably the less drawing I do, which might be an issue. But yeah, certainly the more conversation we have, the more interesting and informative this becomes, because it starts me thinking about how I approach stuff or how I do certain things. Yeah, Ethan was saying over on Twitch that it's definitely something that builds up over time as people drop by and watch returns. Yeah. Again, the videos are there all to sort of go through at people's pleasure and leisure on YouTube, and I think Twitch keep it for a little while. Don't keep all of the videos. So one of the reasons for multi-streaming this is that there'll be at least a record on YouTube of past videos, and over a period of time I think it's important to look back and look at your review of what you've done, specifically with your artwork, but it'll be also interesting to do it with the videos as well, to see in, hopefully you're still doing this in 5 years, that how I started off doing this is completely different to how I'm actually doing this now, right now, this second. I talked about this last week, where I had the mobile phone pointing at the drawing, and I had my arms around it, talking into the back of the camera like that. There was something really hokey about it, but functional, and I've got several cameras and half of them switch off half the time, and I can't find out what screen I'm on and stuff like that. It's become a bit of a distraction to actually the process. So it's all swings and roundabouts. Yeah, I believe they keep VODs for longer as you affiliate and partner. I see. Okay. What is a VOD? Video of Duh. I don't know what a font is. It just shows you how old I am. Probably the oldest person on Twitch right now. Yeah, but so all these different formats have different strengths and weaknesses. You get different content shown to you. Instagram might be an interesting one. I wish I could live stream to Instagram as well as I'm doing this, because as a place for artists' work to see it, it's great. But they're kind of mobile phone based, and that's their unique selling point, and that's how they curate their world. But it just means I can't kind of share that across that platform as well. Hopefully, if the internet people are watching, sort it out. People still use their computers as well as their phones. There's less functionality on the PC for Instagram than there is actually on your mobile phone. But for artists, it's a good place to get research and just to see artwork in general. So this jacket is definitely darkening up, and definitely getting some more depth appearing in the hair. This needs to be a bit darker. Just as I said that, this bit needs to be a little bit darker. Swings out around here and back in. I'll break some hair shapes up, and some of them just disappear into the texture of the jacket. This whole area is a lot thinner. It's also a lot darker because it's starting to stand out like a highlight, and it's not. So I'm going to knock all that back. It's also thicker here. And tone that down. I'll pick out some details in it with a rubber to kind of drag it across to bring up some textures and things. But yeah. And really, it's just kind of like the fun part, enjoyment of drawing, that you're really almost sculpting. This is my kind of enjoyment too. You're really sort of sculpting the forms and shapes of the drawing now. See the texture starting to build in. A few little strokes just at this point. It's kind of like a band of them. This things kind of undulate in between and in and out. But as a base tone, it's starting to work okay. It's maybe a little bit darker just about here. Put some tone in there. But you can see the base of this hair is starting to become a little bit more lifelike. Oh, apparently on Twitch there is a streamer called Piano Lel. I'm Pro Man, who's 76. Oh cool, okay, we've got 26 years to go. My plan is just to keep doing this, not stop until they switch the computers off. See what happens. Probably driving me mad. Oh, video on demand, VOD. Oh, thank you. You see, these abbreviations do my head in. There's so many of them. And so many different formats, I can't just remember what they mean anymore. I get the indication it might be something to do with videos, but I don't know exactly what it means. So video on demand, great. See, I learned something. This is why streaming's fun. It's not about, oh, I know loads of stuff and you don't. It's a case of like, I think I know what I'm doing. I'll share some stuff. You probably know an awful lot more. Can you tell me what it is I should be doing? And likewise, if you know a process that I am not doing or I can do to improve my artwork, you can share it with me. You can tell me as well. I by no means class myself as a know-it-all, because I don't. I just like sharing out what I do know. So if there's room and improvement for me to learn, I'm more than happy to pick up new styles of working, or approaches, or things to look at or concentrate on. So say I've had people go, I really just don't like your artwork. That's fine. You don't necessarily have to like what I do, but if you know of an approach, I'm always interested to find out about that. Say my flavour of artwork isn't necessarily to everybody's cup of tea. That's fine. We're all different. I like difference. I don't want everybody to be doing the same thing I'm doing. It become quite dull and boring. Some people think my work is dull and boring. They like something that's a bit more edgy, fine cutting, or does something else. Then I would say go and find it. Go and find what floats your boat artistically. Again, this whole hair, this lapel needs to be darker. I just kind of took a step back there, looked at that, and as a whole, this is way too light. So I'm just going to go over the whole thing. Now, as I've built up tones already, I'm not destroying them, because these lighter sections will still appear lighter as I put an even application of graphite all over them. But overall, this entire area is darker. So I need to be brave and put those darknesses in. Including the one behind us there. It might look a bit kind of grainy at the moment. I want to soften that a little bit to give a solidity to it. So I'm going to use that brush that I had on my table. There it is. Taking that graphite that I've put on today and just pushing it in to the surface. So it just evens the graphite out a little bit and flattens it. You can use a paper stump to do this, but I just find the stumps are a bit kind of aggressive, a bit kind of scratchy on the surface. I like using the softer brush. It's much kinder to the paper. It just gives you a greater sense that you can move things around a little bit more. Definitely want to get in here and do these darks on this bit as well. As I say, once you do one area and you start to look at it in conjunction with something else, you kind of got, oh no, that needs to be darker, and start tweaking that. People say, oh, when do you know when you stop work? I stop work when I don't know what I need to do next to that bit, because that bit is the right tone for that bit and it looks in the right place. And if I start tweaking, just fiddling for the sake of fiddling, that's when I stop. I just go, okay, visually I'm not really changing anything here, and detail wise I don't want to go into too much more detail than that, and it kind of I get less and less to do in the drawing, so it kind of, these big shapes are quite quick and immediate to begin with. Then you sort of break those shapes down, it takes a little bit more time. Then you tone them, it takes a little bit more time. Then you tweak those tones, it'll be a little bit more time. Then there's less to tweak and it gets suddenly quicker again. So time rate, drawing wise, goes really effectively quicker, and it slows down because you're going through the process of development, and as you develop it and refine it, it happens a lot more quickly towards the end. There's like this kind of U shape if you want to look at a timeline. So yeah, that's what in general that is. I'm not going to say it's for every drawing. Sometimes drawings are just a trial from beginning to end, and they really stretch you. and sometimes they're a total kind of pleasure fest where you're just sitting back and you doesn't even feel like you're drawing, just every mark flows in the right place and works. And that's what I'm saying, it's sometimes you've got to sit back and investigate why things were so successful as well as why things didn't work quite so well. See about this shadow is a little bit darker. It's darker on this side and then it kind of blends out. It's got a sharper edge on this side, and on the other side of it kind of blends into the shadow, so it's softer. So you see that? One side is crisp, the other side is soft. It's the same with this hair on the top here. Now this hair clip is definitely darker, so I'm going to be brave and put this darker. So I'm not really pushing hard on this softer pencil, just lightly going over the surface, and that's creating that darkness for me. It's quite uniform. Very little undulation of lights and darks in it. But it's quite solid, and at the minute it looks quite grainy, so I'm going to use that same process of using the brush just to push some of this graphite into those areas of the paper. Just like a paper stump, but a little bit softer. Pay close attention to the crispness of the edge of it. Here it gets a little bit fluffy. I'll soften that. And this hair is also darker here as well, so I'm going to lightly go over this whole hair. Just tone it down. Bring that down here. At the back. And it's slightly darker on this strand of block of hair than this block of hair. I'll take this one down a notch. Yeah, but this hair clip is a lot more solid. So spend a little bit of time just filling any little white spaces that I've kind of missed. Brush over it with a brush just to make them a little bit solid, then go back over it again, refine the edges, and that'll be the hair clip done. Make sure I haven't missed out any chat. No, everybody's very quiet today. A little bit more low key. A bit more chilled out. Or is it just me? I don't know. But he seems a little bit quiet today. Let's just keep an eye out on those edges, making sure I don't lose them. So I moved up there just to kind of see where the tip was. Get a little sense of an indication of just that little part of that bow on the hair clip, just a little bit darker on that side. As you do this, it'll lighten up the entire thing. You have to go back over it again, but because you're basically lifting the graphite off the surface, but you're pushing it into all the little crevices and the paper to make them a solid, give a solid appearance. It lightens the overall look of it then, so going back over it you get a lot more crisp feel, and this is straighter here coming down. So just building that tone up now. Ethan's trying to decide whether she go get food or get groceries. I think you should get groceries and cook your own food because you're a good cook. And you're much more satisfied when you made meals that you really like rather than just getting the packet stuff. That's just my take on it. I'm looking forward to when you come over and you do some cooking here, because that would be awesome. But what you make looks delicious. I've seen a couple of your little pictures and they look really, really good. I'm going to use a big marks here just to tone this all together, blend it all together. And this is definitely darker around this face as well, so do that. Sometimes you've got to be brave and just do things and put these big dark tones down. You can sort of fiddle around the edges of them and you become fearful of making a mistake and, oh, I don't want to put the tone down too dark. If it's too light, it's never finished. So you have to kind of see the qualities that need to develop in your drawing and do it. This part of the hair is darker, and this has more of a contour to it as well. You can see me taking that hair right the way through. That hairband, because I want it to look like it's sitting on top, so if I went only up to it a little bit and then not like fully up to it, it would look like a halo effect. Ethan says yes, he's looking forward to making it too. Good. That's what I like. I shall be your kitchen assistant when you cook. You tell me what you need. Things chopped or washed up. Boss me around in the kitchen if you want. For those of you who don't know, that's Ethan, my son, by the way. It's not just some random people on Twitch. Let me invite him round to cook for me. He is actually my son. Sounds like a plan. Good job. See, it can look a bit fluffy and muzzy and a bit misty at this point, and this is where you go back in and you refine it by picking out some of those highlights and putting some of those really deep darker bits in, and it's a kind of a flourish. Soften that whole thing. Definitely some dark bits underneath this eye. So like darken that in a little bit more solid. Now, people say, "Oh, are you painting or are you drawing?" My answer is yes. Now, I'm using a brush, but I'm actually drawing with it. Sometimes when I paint, I use a paintbrush to draw the initial image in, sketch it in with a paintbrush. You get very hard and fast set about what things should and shouldn't be called, and that's just people like making little boxes for themselves. I think, if you draw with a paintbrush, great. If you paint with a pencil, fine. I don't mind. Comes a bit hard when you're putting hashtags on things, so. Pencil painting, brush drawing. Ultimately, I think it's just about your image at the end, what you want people to visually see. As I say, this 9B is very grainy. I want to get some clarity into it. It was enough to put some tone down to get some definition. As I'm starting to blend these areas together, it's becoming a bit fluffy looking. So I want to kind of bring some definement back in by using some of the highlights, but also going back in with some darks. I might not use the 9B to do that. I will go back to using maybe a 4B that has a slightly harder finish. It's going to take me half an hour to find a 4B now. What's that one? No, that's an 8B. This is where my eyesight's failing me. You can actually use harder pencils, like with your drawing. If you're using a lot of softer pencils, rather than using a soft pencil to get a crisp edge, you can use a very hard pencil to pull and push. There's a 3B. You can use a harder pencil to pull and push the soft graphite around to a crisp edge. But this is a 3B pencil. I might just clean that edge up a little bit. It's getting a bit kind of polished. I did have, there it is. This is the Emery P600 grit paper. It's just nice and fine for fine tuning your paper, so your point of your pencil. But if you use graphite over a period of time, it kind of polishes its own surface, becomes very slick, and it's harder sometimes to get the graphite to come off in a nice flowy way. So by going back over it with this emery paper, because it's a little bit grittier than normal paper, it kind of gives it a bit of tooth to the pencil, so it means it flows from the pencil a little bit better. Don't forget to wipe the pencil after doing something like that, because it's just full of graphite dust. I was mentioning this bit area here is a little bit darker. can still see the shapes that I've put in. All that effort I've put in before isn't lost for me doing this. It's just helped me find the right form I need to kind of refine and highlight and pick out. So this is a crispness bit to it. I can go back over this whole area again with this soft graphite with this 3B, and it's kind of moving that soft graphite around, just helping make this look a little bit more solid and deeper. And this area is darker as well. So, checking that nobody's got any other questions. No? You're all good? You're all still with us? Yeah. So I'm literally now going to go through this and just pick out some of these darker little nuanced areas and little places and kind of build up the texture, but I'm keeping true to the form and the shape and the flow of things. How kind of still develop in the face. Still think that chin's slightly darker, so I'm going to go over that whole thing. This is that compare and contrast thing that you kind of, rather than compare and contrast to move objects around, it's compare and contrast to see, is that lighter or darker than that? Yes or no? If it is, light it. If it's darker, darker it. So before this bit of the eye needs to be just a little bit darker. Just help build that solidity above it. still applying this graphite lightly. I'm not kind of pushing it in. I'm still considering how to build up these forms rather than scribbling it in because I just want to get it done. Taking your time to slightly layer them up and then take a review and go, it needs to be darker, and just slightly laying it up. It's a lot easier to build up to the darkness that you want than to put in a very, very hard darkness down and trying to lift it off to become lighter, because it's just a harder process. So I want to try and make things easy for myself, so it's going to be about working smarter and not necessarily harder. If that makes sense. You see when you draw these eyes, lots of quite abstract shapes in them, where you think, oh, an eye is this shape. These eyes are round. So she's got really big eyes, but because of the angle looking forward, she's looking down, she's got her eyes closed a little bit. There is a different shape completely to what you think an eyeball looks like. So going back to that reference that I did right at the very beginning about how to draw basic shapes of a head, her eyeballs, they can't even be seen. So if I put a generic round bowl shape on there, it wouldn't quite fit with this portrait. So when you look at shadows, you can start to see more and more nuances in them, but try and break it down to simple steps about where the approximation of shadows are. Then you can build up the refinement of what's relevant to you and your artwork. That's for my cat in the background, you can hear that. Want to let out? That's Sophie. Grumpy that nobody's paying her attention. So I was hoping to get this finished and done today. I'm probably not, but you can see how this is starting to develop, starting to come towards its completion. It's not perfect by any means. There's always areas of development. You know how every time I draw a face, I learn a little approach about something, a little nuance, how I can refine it. Right now, I'm thinking about how I should organise my desk a little bit better so I can refine my process and save myself so much time looking for things like a rubber. There it is, right in front of me all along. So I'm going to use this mono eraser. I did get one of these I talked about last week, the Factus ones. My General Pencil Company, this one is by Tombro. I just find this little work a little better with the hair. But literally I wouldn't be doing much different now over the next video, the next while of doing this portrait than I've shown you today, so I probably won't have this one on the page tomorrow, or sorry, next week. Certainly tomorrow I will be doing the live portrait artist of the year. I'm going to Twitch that with Twitch. It'll be on Twitch, it won't be on Facebook, but I'll do a quick sort of time lapse of what I've done and completed, and I'll post that up on. I've posted a lot up on Instagram, that Sky Portrait, obviously, because that's their go-to platform, and a bit on Facebook. But I will share my result with you next week, so I'll be doing that from 10 o'clock live GMT time. Although I say that, I didn't actually start it at 10 o'clock last week. I slept in. So I woke up in a panic, went, oh, I'm going to go and draw. Ran in here, watched the beginning part, picked my my selected image of the person who was sitting there, Nicola, and literally got that up on my screen, and I started and went back to the beginning of the broadcast and just listened to it all the way through. So I wasn't bang on time, but that's the benefit of doing it on YouTube, is that you can do that. Oh, sorry, Facebook, not YouTube. Now, as you can see, I'm kind of following the flow this time. I'm not taking the strand all the way through. I'm picking out all these little bits of textural highlights, just little tiny elements, running the rubber through them quite lightly. And it's starting to give me these kind of wispy little bits of hair which kind of tumble over her shoulder and come around this way. And down there. And it's starting to create that kind of wispy natured texture of elements that you can't necessarily draw in with a pencil. You need to kind of find a textural way of putting them down. Mark making. This is what I'm using this rubber for, is mark making. Areas that I lift off and it become a little bit too high, I can go back over the brush and soften them. It all adds in and builds up to the texture of what it is I want to try and put down. So it doesn't become like stringy blobs coming down. I want it to look like hair texture. So the work I did over here, I'm going to have to do over here as well, because there's a certain amount of hair that comes out from there. So a little bit of highlight on the jacket on this side. There's a little bit of highlight on the jacket, just as I started off by saying this morning about this needing to be darkened up. There's a little highlight just ghosting the edge of her jacket coming up. But yeah, I think I'll be carrying on with the rest of that today. I might Twitch this later, just to continue the stream over on Twitch. But I don't think you'll see this. I'll show you the end result probably next week on ArtCat. But yeah, I think I'll carry on with the painting next week. Unless you've got anything requests wise you want to know. Could be a how-to video you want me to make about how you do certain things. I can do that. I'm just looking at the change of angle of this hair coming up there. Yeah, she's getting there. Definitely getting there. The latest part of her nose on there. So that's where we're at. I think we're about 2 hours now for Saturday. It's been fun. Enjoyed it still. I say, if you want to share this with your friends, if you've got other people who are interested in art and you think they might find it benefit, or if you just want to create a little community of people who get together every week and just share what they're doing artistically, that's great too. Do that. So people on Twitch, thank you very much. I might pop back on later. People over on Facebook, thank you. People on YouTube, thank you too. I'll be back next week for Artcat at 2 o'clock GMT time. Tomorrow I will be doing a live stream of what I do for the Sky Portrait Artist of the Year, which will be going live at 10 AM, and that's for 4 hours. So yeah, until then, take care. Ethan, go get some food. I want to see what you're going to cook up. Can't wait. Alright guys, thank you so much. I shall see you again next week.